Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello and welcome. My name is Ben. Oh, you're listening to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We're working from a new script, and I left the important part out. My name is Ben. I'm a pilot here in the Atlanta area. I have a commercial certificate, an IFR rating. I fly an airplane that is a Cessna 182. We like to call the Beast. Joining me tonight is our friend, sport pilot extraordinaire, living in the Portland area, Portland, Oregon, on the left coast. He flies a Flight Design Charlie Tango Limo Sierra CTLS. We like to call the plane the Egg, and our friend's name is Ted. Hello, Ted.
Hey, I'm not used to going second here.
Yeah, we're missing one.
Yeah.
It appears, based on this data, that he should probably be on final approach into John Tune after a super long trip today. So we will be going duo instead of trio tonight.
Yeah, that's the advantage of multiple hosts is we can still do this even down one pilot. So
that's right. And you guys have done a better job when I am missing. So hopefully I can fulfill Brian's role and make this a compelling and interesting podcast tonight.
Yeah.
How things going?
Going well. Yeah. You and I were doing the same thing today, which is using the Creeper bot to watch Brian's flight and, seeing where he is. And then I don't know about you, but I was sitting there in ForeFlight and it's like, okay, how far in distance and time is he from here to home? Is he going to make it back to the show? So yeah, Creeper bot's kind of fun for that.
Yeah. I was going to start throwing out wagers whether he made it on time, but I usually lose those. I'm looking at our comments. We've broadcast usually Monday nights at 8 p.m. You can find us at youtube.com/@midlifepilotpodcast. And just want to do a quick sound check. It appears that one of our supporters, Alpha Juliet, thinks we're kind of low, but it looks like my meters are doing pretty well.
Yeah, same here. I think it's
okay. Good. Maybe AJ's just been flying too much and just there's been some damage to the hearing there. I don't know.
Yes.
So we ask that you check out our website where you can find all the links that we have. You can find us at midlifepilotpodcast.com. There you'll find our Patreon page, links to our YouTube for our live streams, our merch store, and many other things. Speaking of Patreon, we had a pretty big week in new Patreon supporters. At the Lando-Matic level, we have Douglas F. and Dan Holmes. At the Hershey Bar level, we've got Brandon W., Gabor N., who is from Hungary. Thank you, Gabor. Richard, Corey K., Steve S., and Brian M., who just joined tonight. And at the Beast Stole Kit level, we have Old Dog 49. So we appreciate everybody joining us and supporting us on Patreon. It really does help us a lot. So thanks. And we got some good feedback on our sounds, our audio. So that makes me feel a lot better. Thanks to the chat.
Yeah.
And tonight we're going to be talking about short memories in a good way and also forgetting things as well.
And short memory.
And a short memory. What did I say? Short things?
No, you said short memory. And I was just saying also short memory. Yes.
See, I've got a short memory. But before we get into the topic, I wanted to check in to see what you've been up to lately. Any flying?
Yeah. I did just a little bit this week. I flew across town to get pancakes, came back and changed oil in the plane, kind of, just one of those, got the oil warm, and that's about it. Sort of weeks for flying. So
can I tell you,
fun.
I really look forward to those very basic, simplistic flights.
Yeah.
There's not a heavy workload. You're going to go socialize a little bit, have some pancakes, and then have that introvert's time and changing your own oil and just, listening to the sounds at the airport. I do look forward to those more simpler flights.
Yeah.
Short not cross countries, but short hops. I get that.
Yeah.
I had a pretty adventurous weekend.
I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So brother-in-law, Stuart, and my middle son, Noah, flew up to West Virginia to do some whitewater rafting. That was an adventure in and of itself. I have to say there was a couple of moments that I'm thinking this could end really, really badly. And it has, in years past, has ended badly for some people. It was a lot of fun and it was very thrilling. But we went over 5 Class 5 rapids. And getting tossed out of a boat in a Class 5 is not as fun as I thought it would be. And the water was not exactly warm. So, but we had wetsuits on and that part of it was cool. But I had one moment where I got tossed out and, the whole raft, this was a 14-foot raft with 6 people plus a guide, got flipped over. And, we are able to get back on and that was fine. And then literally 5 minutes later, I got tossed out. We got spun around pretty hard and it slung me out. And when I came up, I was under the boat. And then I tried to move my way under the boat. And I was still under the boat. So I'm starting to run a little low on oxygen. And I did get out, but obviously. Yeah. But it was one of those moments like, this is not what I signed up for. Yeah. But we really did have a good time. It was beautiful scenery. It was a great group of folks that we went down with. So it was a good time. So then it was time to get in the plane to come back. And we have an electronic HSI. It's made by Sandell. They're a different name now. Stuart told me what they changed their name to. But anyway, the bulb died. We didn't know that at the time. We didn't know if there was just moisture in the avionics system, but it was not coming on. It was beautiful, clear, in a million VFR day. So we didn't really need it. We have 2 pilots sitting in the front seat with iPads and a compass and a GPS. So we did the full send. It was forecasted to be clear in a million the entire way. It was just really not that much of a concern, but it was an annoyance. We were going to file IFR, but if I didn't have a heading indicator on this and to be able to fly an exact heading, we just said, we'll just go VFR. And that worked out fine. And it turned out it was a pretty inexpensive, aviation-wise, pretty expensive bulb to replace. We had it done, all fixed up today. And even got new lenses on the NAV2 radio so we can actually see what frequency we're dialing in now.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And all, all for fairly reasonable cost. So turned out to be a banner day.
Yeah.
From a maintenance standpoint.
I thought you were going to have to replace that radio. So if it's just
looks like we're going to be able to milk it for a pretty good while longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but it was fun. I was outside of my comfort zone, not having HSI.
Yeah.
But 20 minutes into the flight, I was pretty comfortable with it. We put the autopilot would still work in GPS mode. So it was just programming the right GPS points and it would keep you where you needed to be.
Yeah.
So
now, had you flown up there before?
I have not flown to West Virginia, and there is not a lot of good places to land unless you're staying either west or east of the Appalachian Mountains. I posted some pictures on the Discord server, and it really kind of gave you a good idea. We basically flew up to Knoxville and then flew a northeasterly heading, kind of staying on the edge of the range. So there was an interstate, there were farms and stuff. So if we did lose an engine, I'm not going to say it was flat land, but it was not a bunch of trees and, more level than being in the mountains, I guess I should say. But it was the right way to go. And speaking of West Virginia, we have an event coming up soon. The 100th episode that we will be recording live on October 28th at 4 Golf 7, which is Fairmont, West Virginia, which is the home of our friend Chris Moran. Well, base airport for Chris Moran. We'll be broadcasting live from his hangar. It is open to the public, but we're not doing a big deal of getting Airbnb for everybody or a hotel or whatever. But if you want to join us, if you're in the area, we'd love to have you. Should be a fun time. And I think it'll be the first time that all of us are in the same room recording a podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And if you are planning on going, we do need to have some sort of RSVP. So,
we'd
let
like
us
to know who's coming. Yeah, for sure. So you can just send us a message through our website or email us at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
You can let us know. We'd love to see you.
And as our friend Badger Pilot noted, the 100th episode is not occurring on the exact day that the 100th episode normally would, because sometimes you just make the dates work. So, yeah.
When you're coordinating 4 calendars, you just have to fit that square peg in a round hole.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, anything else you want to launch right in to our topic of the day? Oh, you have a video that I forgot. We need to talk about, for those of you who don't know in the audio world that are listening to this, Ted has a great YouTube channel. Fly Sport is the name of the YouTube channel. And he just posted a video last week?
Yeah, in the last week. Yeah.
You want to tell the audience about it?
Yeah. So I mentioned last week that that I flew with my partner, which is her first real time of flying in the plane, and had a good experience, had some amazing turbulence as well. But we had a great time, flying down to a diner and being in the plane together. So it was nice to do the flight, and then it was fun to make a video out of it as well.
So I noted a couple of things, and I'm going from memory here. Yeah. And we've done a podcast about flying with spouses or significant others.
Yeah.
And it's a really big deal, because when you're in a relationship, and you want to share something that you're passionate about it, you want them to like it as much as you do. And while they may not geek out about it, you want them to be able to go places with you.
Yeah.
And based on the first time that you guys flew together, this one was a huge step forward.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I say it was really our first full-time flying together, because she did one lap in the pattern a year ago and was not handling it before we were off the ground, as I found out later. And, so we came back in and landed. We were headed somewhere, but it was fine. That had all the outs planned so that if anything happened, we had other ways to get there, which is what we ended up doing. And so it took her a while to get the courage to do it again, and get through some life events so that she could be in the plane again. And so, we had a great
Do you
time.
think this will open up the door for maybe longer trips?
That's my hope. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one step at a time.
Right. And it'd be really nice to jump up to the San Juan Islands and do things like that and go spend the night. So.
Really change the game. You might spend 90% of your time in the air instead of 50% of the time in the air.
Yeah.
Our friend Chris C. posted, "My wife and I watched it together. She liked seeing that she's not the only one who reacts the way your partner does. She wants to try it again. Thanks, Ted."
Oh, nice. Yeah. I remember Chris C's wife was there when he soloed. And she's been kind of an active watcher of his flying. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really, again, especially as midlifers, it's if you want to maintain proficiency, it's a lot easier when, I'm not going to say that your significant other may not support you, but when you can say, hey, let's go get in the plane and fly up to Greenville for lunch,
right,
that it opens a lot more doors. So,
right.
I was really excited to see that. I agree with what Chris was saying. I could see I don't want to say struggle, but I could see the concern on her face. Like she was worried about it, but she wanted to be there for you.
Yeah.
And she did a good job with it. And I just think that's, it's not a small accomplishment. It's something that everybody, not everybody, but most people will have to go through at some point in time, that you need them to be in step with you.
Yeah. One of the things that I didn't kind of highlight in the video, but is in there, is that she, when we would hit a little bit of turbulence, or even on the first lap when we're just turning in the pattern, she wanted something to grab onto and was searching with her hands trying to find something. And the egg has such big windows that there's no support given by the doors. It feels like there's no door there because there's so much glass. And so she's kind of searching around, trying to find my leg really through most of it. So,
I noticed, and I'm remembering, so after y'all are coming back from the diner and you're in the pattern at your home airport, remind me the name. Is it?
That is Troutdale.
Troutdale. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
There was some pretty strong gusts while you're like turning base, I think, or
it was just
I think you had a pretty big wing dip.
Yeah. Yeah. It's as if somebody just lifted the wing, and
which I thought she handled that extremely well, because I mean, as a pilot, that would have made me reach up to want to, grab something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of thought after that, that's, I don't want to say that's a worst case scenario, but that was a pretty strong gust.
Yeah. Yeah. That was, it was 30 degrees in less than a second. And I've never had that much of that, kind of, I don't know, side gust like that.
Right. Right.
But yeah, then I was like, all right, I'm getting this thing on the ground. And that's why in the video, it's like, I did a bit of a slip, which I really didn't want to do. Right. But it's like, I don't want to go around. It's a long runway, so I've got the time, but let's not have to go through the pattern and risk the wind from that canyon again.
I thought you did a good job of explaining what you're doing at almost every point. It's funny. I never would have thought to tell my wife, okay, I'm going to do a slip. This is going to get us down quicker with, not picking up that much speed. But that was, I don't know that I would have mentioned that, but I think it probably did do a lot to help maybe assuade her. So,
yeah.
Well, with that, that's one area where she doesn't want to have a short memory. She came through it. She did awesome. But tonight we are going to talk about short memories. And this is a subject something that I have gone through, which I think for the most part we all do. I watched a video today, Lou Dix Aviation. I think the video was released a couple of days ago, but I watched it today.
He made it public today, and it's a day in the life of a CFI.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was kind of spot on what we wanted to talk about. I think especially as midlifers, we like to beat up ourselves for making mistakes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that we're new to something.
Yeah.
And this especially happens during training, but it even happens after training. If you have a bad landing, or if you're working on slow flight and you forget to put the carb heat on, and you'll curse yourself, you'll beat yourself up. And I think it's a constant reminder that we're all learning, whether you're in training or you've passed your check ride, that that you're going to have to go through and learn these things, and you need to move it. You need to move on. You need to forget about it.
Yeah.
And it's not even restricted to in the air type of mistakes. You can have a incursion on the runway, or turn on a wrong taxiway. I don't want to say an incursion, but you know, mix something up. People make these mistakes all the time. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. I was flying down to New Smyrna Beach and I landed on the wrong runway. And I mentioned that on much earlier before we became a co-host. And it almost ruined my weekend at the beach with my family there, because I was just so mad at myself that I could possibly make a mistake like that. When I went back and listened to the ATC audio, the controller said, "It happens every day. Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
And my wife was the one that says, you need to let it go. You made the mistake. You weren't arrested. They didn't impound your airplane. Let's move on. And she was right.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think, I don't know if it's a personality, but it's certainly, I can remember pretty much every mistake I've made in a plane, and there are lots. Those are things that don't go away. But the real thing is, don't have that affect your flying, right? My dad kind of taught me an attitude of, it's like, okay, that happened, now what? And really that's what we mean by have a short memory, which is, all right, bad landing, or you had to go around. It doesn't matter what just happened, right? You need to focus on the flight, on the next landing, on whatever it is. And
yeah, you can actually make things worse by living in the past and spending time regretting your error.
Yeah.
It draws your focus elsewhere, and then you're going to make the next mistake, and then it could start snowballing, and then you could find yourself in real trouble. So my kids played roller hockey, and I was an assistant coach, and I remember we went through some training, and at the highest level, Coach K, Phil, who coached the Bulls for so many years, I'm drawing a blank on his last name, but I mean, they had a concept, flush
Phil,
it.
Yeah. Phil, what's his name? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, you got to flush it. You got to flush it down the toilet and forget about it. The other thing I was going to mention, of the few flights that I've recorded, and I keep saying that, oh, there we go, Phil Jackson. Thank you, Wendell Geek. Not Wendell Geek, but Wendell Geek. Is recording my flights. I had done, after 2 months of not flying, I had taken off and I recorded 3 landings. And I remember driving back in my car thinking, what has happened to me? I have, lost it. I've got to go do 20 laps in the pattern to get this back. But when I watched the video, they really weren't that bad. They actually were pretty decent. And so I think that's another area where we just can get wrapped up. And, I think that was that situation where I had the bad landing, and then I'm like pressing. I'm like, okay, well, this one's got to be much better.
Right.
And it was about the same as the last one, probably because I didn't change anything. I had the exact same throttle settings. I had the exact same everything. And, it made the second one a little worse and made the third one a little worse.
Yeah.
So it's just another example of when you keep dwelling in the past, then you're going to make things worse.
Yeah. I want to go back to a comment from Wendell Geek. He said, can a mistake be remembered in a way that impacts your flying positively? That's certainly true for me in some cases. Certainly there's, the damage to the ego and beating yourself up. But I certainly do that on especially on missed procedures. I was, if I forget to take out the very last notch of flaps, which is 6 degrees in the egg, and beat myself up for flying for a little while like that. And then it's like, wait, no, how can I do this better? Oh, I need to include that in a procedure. And I've gotten a lot better on improving my procedure to avoid that. Now I've made the same mistake again, right? But I think there is that, using that feedback loop and learning as you go from that.
We've got another comment. Johnny Williams, agree with short memory, but also think it's important to understand why it happened, what you can do to improve it going forward. I 100% agree with this. I definitely think that if you make a mistake, to learn from it.
Yeah. But
let's not dwell on it too much. An example of that, when I was doing my private training, I was struggling with steep turns. And my problem was I had eyes inside and not looking at the horizon and really getting that angle right. And to the point where my instructor got a towel and he taped it to the dash to where I could not see anything.
Yeah.
And forced me to look outside. And guess what? They got a lot better real quick.
Did you play with a sim beforehand? Had you done flight sim stuff?
I did a little bit. Okay. I was trying to avoid creating bad habits in the simulator cockpit that would transfer over.
Yeah.
I do remember spending time. I wouldn't even take off in the airplane. I would put myself in the air at 5,000 feet, and I just kind of drilled into my head to get that angle of the glare shield or the dash with the horizon, and know that that's what. But if the horizon slid a certain way, that was climbing or descending, and that's what really helped me out with that.
Yeah.
I was outside, set your power, and so the simulator helped me into where to focus my attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, there are times when we need to have a short memory, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't take away from learning from your mistake.
Yeah, I think that there's learning, and then there is and use that use mistakes to your advantage in your learning, but don't use it to your detriment in your flying, or focus on how it hurts the ego. And you definitely want to learn from it.
Right. I'm not sure if you noticed this, but we got a new person in the chat.
Yeah, our chat's really blowing up tonight, and it's a little distracting. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got this one guy. His name is, we're fighting over each other.
Yeah.
Siskin.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Brian
says, there. I would like to have a short memory about seeing a tarantula hawk for the first time in Marfa. Don't even know what that is, but I'm sure we'll hear about it next week.
Yeah, it's got the word tarantula in it, so you know it's not going to be good.
It can't be good.
I also want to highlight a comment from Mr. Ballard in here. He said, wrong runway, Ben. I've landed at the wrong airport, facepalm. Story for another day. Oh, we may need to hear that story. Yeah.
I really appreciate him saying that. And I'm not going to say it doesn't surprise me that Mr. Ballard has made a mistake. Something like that does surprise me a little bit. But I think, and we have a bunch of comments in the chat tonight about student pilots struggling with steep turns and stuff. We're going to make mistakes, all of us. Yeah. And landing at a wrong airport, I'm surprised I haven't done that yet. I figured it's only a matter of time for me. I have noticed that controllers at locations where there are multiple airports very close by will say, do you see this airport, and this airport? And I'm glad that they do that for me. Maybe they know me better than I think I know myself.
Yeah, where was that conversation? Was that in a video, or was that on OB last week? There was something about, do you see these 3 airports? Because if you don't see the 3, you don't know which one you're landing at.
We were talking about meeting one dull geek. See, I have to slow myself down to make sure I say it right.
Yeah.
Meeting him in Greenville, because there's Greenville downtown, Donaldsonville, and Greensville, Spartanburg.
That's what it is.
Multiple times on the radio. It wasn't that they were singling any one pilot out. They were saying it to multiple pilots, GA pilots.
Yeah.
Are you, are you looking at the right airport?
Yeah.
So, but there's been quite a few good comments tonight, and some new listeners too. Wanted to give a shout out. James S. says, steep turns are kicking my butt right now. Thanks for the advice. Yeah. Those are the mistakes that you need to start learning from, and you will. It's just a matter of time. It's repetition. It'll just click at some point in time. Same with landings.
Yeah. And to be clear, we're not CFIs. We're sharing our experiences, and we've made our share of mistakes on those maneuvers. There was something in Lou Dix's video that I wrote down this quote from him. He was doing a review with a pilot, with a woman who got her ticket and was coming back and was doing maneuvers, and she hadn't done the maneuvers in a little while, and she was kind of beating herself up for the lack of perfection. And he said to come back and perform at amazingly high levels is basically impossible. Don't beat yourself up about not performing to the highest standard. And I liked that, right?
That's what resonated me specifically with this podcast, because I feel like most midlifers are going to hold themselves to a higher standard.
Yeah. And
we need to relax those standards a little bit and just understand that we are students and that we're going to make mistakes and that we're going to have to learn from them. So it's just part of the process. We all are going to go through it.
Yeah. Well, it's also because this is something completely new to us and completely foreign. You don't know what level is good enough. You know what perfection is. Like, let's use steep turns, right? It's 45 degrees and 0 altitude change. But at what point is it kind of, are you doing a pretty good job at it, right? Again, that highest standard. And it's not even maneuvers. I had made 2 more areas in which we don't do right that we might get upset at ourselves on. And the other one of them is talking on the radio. And I kind of wish that Mr. Siskin was with us, because he has told us on several occasions where he's got yelled at by ATC. And I'm sure he felt really bad about it. And I'm sure he stewed about it. But, knowing Brian, he moved on and probably learned from it. As a matter of fact, I know one incident, he actually called the tower to say, what should I do in this situation going forward? And speaking of Mr. Siskin, he also made a comment, I would like to have a short memory of when today I was getting flight following on the 3rd leg of my trip, and ATC asked where I departed from, and I just said, what was the name of the airport? Oh man. Sounds like a very airline captain thing to do. Yeah. I was doing that not very long ago, where I was coming into the airport. It's like, you know what? This is a north-south runway, but I don't remember what the number is. And I should have known that before I made my call. And you're sitting there on the call and you're like, well, I have regret. And yeah.
The one other area that I was going to say that, again, I've made mistakes that I think most of us is likely that we will make the same mistake, is violating airspace.
Yeah.
I've said it before. I've busted a Bravo very briefly, and I filed a NASA report right afterwards. The controller was super cool about it. Gave me a little bit of a tongue lashing, but said, just make sure you check the airspace before you take off again. And because it was an airport that I hadn't taken off from in that direction before. So again, for most of that flight, I had that weighing on my mind when I probably should have been focusing on a few other things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot. you, and again, you don't forget that. You wish you could, but the main thing is, how did it affect your flying after that, right? And it got in the way.
That may have been a turning point in my journey where I realized after I landed that, I wasn't doing my checklist as I normally do. I realized that I stewed about busting the airspace because it was right after the Vegas Bravo buster.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking to myself, I'd never bust Bravo airspace. And 2 weeks later, there I go and do it. That really, really bothered me. That really got to me to the point where it didn't affect safety of flight, but I could have done a lot better.
Yeah.
And getting ready for landing and not getting behind the airplane.
Yeah.
When I got on the ground, that's when I realized, okay, you need to forget about it and move on to the next and, do better next time.
Yeah.
Don't turn the volume of the radio down when your son's trying to talk to you. And then those are the takeaways. Now let's go take on the next flight. So that to me, it felt like it was a turning point in being able to choose those short memories.
Yeah. I do think, and by the way, I'll link to the Vegas Bravo Buster in the show notes if you haven't seen that video. I do think you can use an example of that and think about if you were flying a retract, how it would be easy to really get yourself in trouble, and because you're fixated on other things, and you see that in the accident reports, right? Where something was happening, and so they didn't do their normal check on the way into landing, and so just to use a very specific example of that, and that's how it can get in the way, and,
yeah. So it's a fine line. Take lessons from your mistakes, and then move on to the next, whatever the next is.
Yeah.
And one dull geek commented, I suspect what you did, Ben, was very different than the Vegas Bravo buster. I was 500 feet into their airspace. I apologized profusely, and he was totally cool about it. So yeah, it was a good bit different, but it was that attitude that, I'll never bust a Bravo. I fly under it. I'm always aware of it, and that should never happen to me. And then it happened shortly thereafter.
So we know a couple of controllers. 2 minutes after that happened, how much of that did the controller remember?
It's a great question. And my guess is as soon as I signed off with him, he had no recollection of it whatsoever.
Right. And
it's an excellent point.
Yeah.
They've moved on. You should too.
Right. And it gets back to, here's where we can invoke Mr. Siskind. It gets back to the mantra of nobody cares, right? Which is that controller didn't care. You're sitting there beating yourself up over it. He didn't care. It's not, at that point, it's not a problem. And so sometimes how do people from the outside look at this is maybe a way to kind of think through that.
It's an excellent point.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. If you take somebody else's perspective, you'll be like, you know what? Get over yourself.
Yeah.
I've forgotten. You should too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anything else? We've gotten some feedback. Do you want to tackle that? Or is there something else on short memory that you want to cover?
Yeah, let's go into that feedback. Yeah.
I feel like I've been talking a lot. Why don't you take this?
Sure. So we have a new Patreon supporter and a person who wrote in with feedback, and that is Mr. Brian M. And Brian is at Falcon Field in Arizona. He said, "Hi guys, I wanted to drop you a quick note to let you know how happy I was to find your podcast. I'm 57 years old and started working on my PPL a couple months ago. I'm an A&P mechanic and even worked for a large airline located in Atlanta, LOL. I always wanted to get my pilot rating. At 57, I was concerned whether it would be worth all the time and effort, but after soloing, passing my written with an 85, not perfect, but I had to throw stuff out of my brain to make room, I am all in. I'm enjoying the ride and the experience and never set a goal as to how many hours it should or shouldn't take. Thank you for putting together your show, as it has helped me in ways I hadn't even imagined, and I'm only like 5 episodes in. I'm going to try to join one of the live shows in the coming weeks and look forward to hopefully meeting you in person. Thanks again. Sincerely, Brian, 3.M. Curious what the 3 is, but he captures a lot of the things that that are the struggles as a midlife pilot learning to fly, right? Not being perfect on the written, not knowing if you can remember all the things you need to know. How many hours is it going to take, right? Those are all such common concerns.
I've been getting back on Facebook and joined a group, the Student Pilots Over 50, which is a great Facebook group, very supportive of everybody. And it's really opened my eyes to, there are a lot of people that are taking their check rides at 150 hours or 200 hours or soloing at 50 or 60 hours, and it's a lot. And I think that's awesome. These are people that are enjoying the ride. And I hate to say it this way, but you should actually embrace your mistakes. I wanted to say enjoy your mistakes, but don't do that. Just embrace them.
Yeah.
It's fine. That's how you're going to learn the most. Brian, who is commenting from the chat instead of in person a lot, which I appreciate. It's amazing the little things in training you screw up that just make you laugh now and just say, oops, let's move on. Excellent point.
Yeah. Yeah. The things that you're mortified about and that you sit there and think about over and over. And then later you realize, you know what? Yeah, that's normal.
I think this is what it is so I'm 56. At 56, I've learned that I am not going to get the phone call from the Blue Angels to come join them because I'm such a good stick and rudder guy. I've resigned to that fact. It's not going to happen. And I don't have to be a perfect pilot anymore. So another comment that I wanted to get to from One Dull Geek. For me, it's also an ego thing. I'm not the pilot I thought I was, and that's really hard to recover from. But it's also about, I would argue, that it's embracing the pilot who you are.
Yeah. So
it's all great feedback.
Let's highlight a comment from Banjo Pilot here. It said, the feeling, quote unquote, feeling not perfect after a good chunk of time not flying is definitely the reason I'm hesitant to get back in the plane. We had a friend of the show, Patreon supporter Chris C, talking about that as well, about not being the person who can fly all the time and being aware of that loss of skills during that time period.
Right.
But you're not going to be perfect. And when you get back in that plane, you're not going to be perfect. You're not perfect when you have been flying every day either, but you certainly remember more. Yeah.
Do you remember the movie? It was called Leap of Faith. It was with Ben Stiller and Edward Norton. Ben was a rabbi and Edward Norton was a priest, and they did all this stuff together. And it was one of my earlier favorite movies. But Ben Stiller is coaching a kid for his bar mitzvah, and he said, "You need to embrace the suck.
Yeah,
you need to just own how bad you are and go with it." And sometimes in training, that's how you're going to get through it. Is instead of beating yourself up over it, enjoy it and figure it out.
Yeah, and embrace the suck. Yes,
that's right. So, anything else, sir, for the good of the order for tonight?
No, I'm good. I'm glad that we got to talk about this.
Chat room. Yeah. Seen some new faces. Really glad to see that. Want to remind everybody, you can check us out at midlifepilotpodcast.com. We've got a merch store there, t-shirts, hats, all kind of cool stuff. We're just want to remind everybody, we're not instructors. We are not CFI. Don't take our advice when it comes to learning how to fly, but we're just here to share our experiences and commiserate with everybody through their short memories. Next week, I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about. We haven't gotten together on that. Hopefully, Mr. Siskin won't decide to fly to Alaska and back in 2 days. Hopefully, he'll be here to join us for that. We did miss you, Brian, but glad you were able to join us in the chat. And that should about do it, I guess.
Yeah.
Please email us, reach out to us, give us some feedback. If you have any show topic suggestions, we'll take that. If you want to write us a poem, we'll read it on air. With that, we will close out episode 92 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Good night, everybody.